Welcome back to Wellness with Delaney. Today I am with Carnivore JT. He's a carnivore influencer, trainer, athlete, among so many things. And today we're going to talk all about how you can optimize your health through animal-based and carnivore lifestyle, as well as optimizing your fitness, because that is an area of expertise for him. I know we've been doing a lot of carnivore content lately, but you guys love it. So we're going to keep on powering through. JT, thank you so much for joining.
I appreciate you having me on.
I'm so excited to chat. Okay, so I would love to just know the origin story. I was doing a little Google deep dive, and it sounds like you have really had quite the transformation.
Yeah, so I kind of went. It's a little bit of a misleading transformation because I'll post like when I started carnivore, and then I'll post current, right? And there's a big difference there. The caveat to it is I was in really good shape throughout my entire 20s, right? Like I was a college athlete. I, did amateur bodybuilding, and so like I was always in really good shape. And then I kind of got dad bod. I was like, oh, this is like, I don't like this. And so I tried to go back to my old tricks, and like they started to work for weight loss, but I didn't feel good. Like I felt terrible still. And I was like, this is stupid. Like I am putting like all this work and I'm eating super clean. I'm not cheating at all. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing any of this. And I don't feel any better. And so I kind of just gave up on it and regained all of the weight almost instantly. And then finally got started on animal based and felt better instantly. And I was like, I can deal with this. And so then I did animal based for about a year. And then I was like, well, what happens if I just go full carnivore? Like, what happens if I just get rid of the carbs completely? I felt great. I think animal based is great as far as a diet. I'm definitely not one of those carnivores that's anti-carb per se. But I was like, what happens? Let's see. And I just felt a little bit better. And so since then, I've just been, and I'll go and I'll experiment around and I'll, have hiatuses and like go back and forth. And I always just come back to it because I just feel best that way.
Okay, I actually think that's really interesting. I didn't know that you were one of the carnivores that like doesn't think carbs are the devil. Um, I didn't know that about you, and I would love to hear a little bit about like your philosophy and your mindset around like what food is healthy.
So I think we are extremely adaptable as humans, right? That's why you can go find, Tibetan monks who are vegan for the last 5,000 years. You can go find the Hadza or the Hadza are kind of a hunter-gatherer, or the Inuit who are, virtually carnivore. We're very adaptable, right? And so I don't necessarily think that there's only one specific way you have to eat. And people have shown that, like, you have healthy vegans out there, you have healthy carnivores out there. If you can be that polar opposite, then you can probably also be healthy somewhere in the middle. The issue, I think, arises in just our modern food, right? And so if you look at what we've done to produce specifically, right? I virtually think all processed carbohydrates have a negative side effect to them. Does that mean you'll be unhealthy eating them? No. But I think they do more harm than good for the most part. And unfortunately, most of our food is ultra processed. So then you get down to, okay, well, what about whole foods, right? And I'm totally fine with a whole food diet. But if you look at where our whole foods is now compared to where they should be, right? Like, if you want to use the natural, somebody on here is going to go, that's an appeal to nature fallacy. Well, yeah, nature got it right 99.9% of the time. I'm sorry. It just is what it is. But if you look at what it's supposed to be, the fruit's not supposed to be as sweet. It's not supposed to have as much fructose in it. It's not supposed to be, laden with pesticides and chemicals on the peels, and most vegetables are not naturally occurring, right? Like, we have created most vegetables, and most of it out of necessity, right? Like, kale was basically created to be famine resistant, right? And when you had really harsh harvests, kale would survive and you'd have something to eat. So we have all of these foods that derived out of a necessity, and now we've pushed them as being super healthy. And I'm like, well, not necessarily, right? Yeah. So I'm fine with fruit. I'm fine with most vegetables, but people will find that they do a little bit better without them. And I think the big reason is because we're kind of deviating away from, where we started with them.
Hmm. Wait, okay, kale, that makes sense. It's like man-made because it's literally horrible. I'm on a crusade against kale. What are some other vegetables that are actually man-made, not God-made?
Literally all of them, right? Like if you Google, so first you have to distinguish fruits and vegetables. Like a lot of things we consider vegetables are actually fruits. But almost everything is a byproduct of something else. Like if you look up what's it actually a natural vegetable, you end up with a couple random things and like wild onions, right? Like, so you have very small actual vegetables, that were here, God made, as you said. And it's kind of the same thing with fruits. Like, yeah, apples are God made, but like not the way we have, right? So if you have to look at where stuff started and where they are now, and they do like a comparison of what would be like a natural banana versus a regular banana, and you start to realize you're like, okay, like we've kind of manipulated this. And again, it's like it derived from a place of necessity, right? If I'm trying to avoid dying from lack of food, and I can make a crop that produces more and larger fruit that has more calories and more, more nutrient and all this stuff, then why wouldn't I? Right. And so but then we started going, well, now I can make more money if I do this. And so then you start looking at corn, right? Corn is a massive product. And people who don't know about corn's literally like runs the world, right? Corn's in everything, not just food related. Well, farmers pick their seed of corn that they're going to grow based on how much they can grow, crop per dollar, right? So everything is driven by the almighty dollar, which has its good and bads, but that's kind of where we ended up with our food is now all driven by money. And I hate to break it to you, if anybody thinks that, healthy, good values in food line up and money line up, yeah, you're in for a rude awakening.
Mm-mm. Wait, this is so crazy too. I feel like this debunks like one of the most common comments I get is like you're fear mongering against like natural foods if naturally occurring in nature it's good for you. I'm like, wait, it's not naturally occurring in nature. Like that just changes everything.
Yeah, and that's the people love the appeal to nature. Like just because it's natural doesn't mean it's healthy, and then they'll cite off a whole bunch of chemicals and poisons that can kill you that are natural. I'm like, yeah, to a degree, but if you tell me, right, I will argue this to the end of the day. God puts a piece of fruit out there, you grow your own. We can't do it better, right? There's a reason that medical sciences are so far behind the human body because you cannot create in a lab what is naturally occurring, right? Like from the human body perspective, it's impossible. And so we try our best to recreate and make it better. And even if we get something right, there's always a side effect, right? There's
Mhm.
always then another side effect that we then have to account for, which is how you end up on 15 medications, right? Like,
Mhm.
yes, there are certain things that we have been able to come up with as a defense against diseases like penicillin, right? Fantastic. But penicillin has led to the rise of, like MRSA, like methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. We now have these bacteria that are resistant because we've come up with these drugs and then we've pushed them too much and we've used them too much. And now we have whole other issues. And now we have to come up with another drug and then we're going to have another resistant. And it's just going to be on and on and on and on. And at the end of the day, there are very few examples, especially food, where we're able to go, I can do it better. It's just
Mm.
like we're just going to end up with health consequences, and you're seeing it. Like we're sicker than ever.
Yeah, sicker than ever, fatter than ever. Like it's absolutely crazy. So for you, seeing how like food has been manipulated and bioengineered to become something that it wasn't thousands of years ago, is that really why you decided to give up plants altogether?
I mean, it's a reasoning for it, but ultimately I just do it because I feel better, right? Every time I
Yeah.
try to go back on some type of carbohydrates, mainly fruit, it just triggers cravings. And
Mm,
it's not cravings that I've ever really dealt with, but just the high fructose content just makes me hungrier. It makes me crave something at the end of the day. It makes me want to eat more. It just, and even a little bit, like I can just do, a couple servings of fruit and I instantly feel it. And so, I'll do vegetables and I'll instantly bloat a little bit. And it's not bad. Like I can totally live with it. But I'm like, why?
Like, do I
I
want to?
don't feel like I'm getting any benefit from this. All I'm getting is a little bit of drawbacks and negatives. So why would I? Right. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how I try to incorporate it, there's always something. And I know that if I just go back to, a stricter carnivore, every single thing is going to alleviate.
Yeah, and I've heard this a lot. You're not the first person to come on here and say that like sugar leads to food cravings and like the fruit leads to food cravings and like even adding a little bit of fruit can like send people down a spiral, which I find really fascinating. I know I've heard from Dr. Chafee that like your body basically craves the nutrients, so it's going to keep craving more food until you get what it wants. Do you find that with carnivore, like all your food cravings are gone?
For the most part, yeah. As long as I eat
Wow.
enough fat, um, I don't have any issues whatsoever. Right. Like
Wow.
I eat when I'm hungry and I eat till I'm full and then I just live my life. Right. And it's very rare when I stick to strict carnivore that, I have at the end of the day where I'm like, oh my gosh, I would just, like, sure, I could. Right. Like there's a whole bunch of foods that I could eat, but there's nothing that like you have to have like, spiritual warfare with at the end of the day because I just don't feel that. Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like I need to eat. And if I don't eat enough during the day, I might have something. But as long as I stay on top of the amount of food I'm eating and enough fat, it's, yeah, it almost completely goes away.
I think this is really fascinating, especially a lot of people I know who will listen to this and just like women in general specifically, but I know with men too, there's a lot of like binge eating, there's a lot of eating disorder, food obsession, like food noise. And so then a common rebuttal I hear for like a stricter diet with more discipline is like that is inherently disordered because you're restricting food groups. But it's really interesting where like what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is that sometimes these more disciplined diets actually because they're so structured and they're geared around not creating these food cravings, it can actually have the opposite effect of being really like freeing for people who have these food addictions and food obsessions where like you're no longer having all of this noise and all this kind of like analysis paralysis when it comes to dieting. So how long have you been on carnivore?
I just actually hit 1,000 days
Wow.
the beginning of last month, so
Wow.
almost 3 years. And I haven't been strict the entire time. I've been, animal based, like I said before, and then I've done some experiments here and there. But like for the most part, like if you track all of the meals that I've eaten, the vast majority, 90, 95+%, have been carnivore of the last almost 3 years now.
Congratulations. 1,000 days is a big deal. Do you regularly get like your labs done to see where your body's at?
I do actually. And it's pretty standard, like decent HDL, decent triglycerides, high LDL. Um, my personal favorite is carnivore is going to give you diabetes. I'm like the most insulin sensitive person on the face of the earth. Uh, my HUMA IR score, if you're unfamiliar with it, it basically takes your fasting glucose, your insulin, and I believe it even does your HbA1c, and it gives you an insulin resistance score. And anything around like 2 is really good, right? So if you're a 2.0 on your insulin, I'm a zero point 0.3. I actually had, when I first got my insulin numbers back, I actually had to Google if they were too low. I was like, is my insulin too low? Because my insulin sits
Wow.
just under 2, um, which is crazy low. And literally everything comes back with oh, if you have low insulin, you're probably diabetic because you have high blood sugar. But I don't. Like my blood sugar is like 80. And my HbA1c is always around 5. No matter what I eat, no matter what I do, what experiment, when I do it, it's always 80 and it's always 5. And so then I just, I have a naturopathic doctor who's a type 1 diabetic and runs a diabetes clinic. And I sent him in my numbers and I was like, hey, am I good? He's like, yeah, you're like the most insulin sensitive person ever. Like, you're good. So that one's super funny to me. Like anytime people are like, it's going to cause you diabetes, and I was like, yeah, when? Like at what point will I start? And then they'll come back with, well, now you're not carb tolerant. And I was like, yeah, well, actually I did 3 weeks of eating 500 grams of ultra processed carbs and my glucose went from 79 to 81. Mm-hmm. Like I am very carb tolerant. Like I can eat carbs, no problem. Just better without them.
Yeah, this is interesting too. People love to say, like, if you're eating a lot of red meat and butter and eggs, like, oh, you're gonna be diabetic. But like in Australia, the standard procedure for diabetes would be a ketogenic diet. And on top of that, like grains, like foie gras is a diabetic bird that we feed grains. Like we don't feed it meat and butter and eggs. Like we feed it grains. And then people still somehow think that we get diabetes in a different way. I'm like, no, it's crazy. Like people always, all the time, not the diabetes one, but people are always like, how are you not fat? You're so little and you eat so much red meat and so much butter. And I'm like, exactly, precisely. Like you answered your own question. I don't know what to tell you. But that's okay. Cholesterol as well. You mentioned, another one I hear a lot is the cholesterol, like too much red meat, too much butter, too many eggs, bad for your cholesterol. What is your philosophy there?
So I have two philosophies. One, we have an entire industry predicated on LDL being bad, right? And anytime you have an industry as large as statins, so Lipitor for Pfizer, they lost the patent to Lipitor like 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. It is still the second highest selling drug of all time.
Wow.
Even though they lost the patent 12 years ago, it is still the second highest selling drug of all time. And so when you then look at all of the different companies that make a, LDL cholesterol lowering medication and all of the money that is involved, and the fact that we continue to lower our LDL goals, and yet heart disease is not getting better. The only thing that's getting it better from heart disease, and this is whether this is just a coincidence or whether it's orchestrated, I don't know. Try and find the actual numbers for heart disease, and all you're going to find out is death rate, right? And so all you'll find is death rate, which is good for them because less people are dying from their first heart attacks, right? Like we are better at keeping people alive once they do get heart disease. We are not better at preventing heart disease. And so if we've had statins for 20 years now, how are we not improving heart disease? We continue to actually lower LDL from a population-wide perspective. We're continuing to push lowering it. We're continuing to push statins, and yet heart disease is not getting better.
Wow.
So, okay, like all of the money, and then you have research, which is all very circumstantial in nature. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. And then you throw on top of the fact that you can manipulate your LDL really easily. And Nick Norwich showed that with his Oreo versus statin, just, be on a low carb diet and then eat a bunch of Oreos and you'll lower your LDL. I did the same thing. I ate a whole bunch of carbs and I lowered my LDL like 80%. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that if I were to continue this diet, I would have less risk of heart disease than continuing the other diet, eating junk food versus like, come on. Like we have to have a little bit of common sense here. And then you start looking into what LDL actually does. And of course, if I'm on a ketogenic type diet and I rely on fatty acids as my fuel source, fatty acids are not water soluble. So I need a carrier protein, and that's what LDL is. So of course I need more LDL to shuttle around my fatty acids. And so then like I just look more and more into it and I'm like, no, I don't prescribe that LDL on its own is what's causing heart disease. And that's a huge point of contention, and people hate that. But then you see other studies, like UCLA did a study where 75% of people who had heart attacks had normal LDL levels. I'm like, okay, so if lowering LDL is not helping heart disease and normal LDL is not preventing heart attacks, why am I trying to lower my LDL? Like,
Mm.
what are we doing? Why? And so, I mean, and you have some that are out there trying to get LDL as close to zero as possible, which is really dangerous because if your LDL is zero, you die. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have LDL. And it just, anytime there's that kind of money involved, it just really makes me question. And, you start to look at what we're doing from a diet standpoint, an exercise standpoint, and all these other factors. The fact that diabetes is going through the roof, overweight. So you look at, let's say there's 10 risk factors for heart disease, and 9 of mine are super good. I'm sorry, I'm not really worried if the 10th one is out of your range.
Yeah. Wait, okay. And like I'm tracking with you because I am very conspiracy adjacent. Okay. So are you saying that this whole demonization of LDL could really be a big pharma conspiracy to make billions of dollars?
So my very first video that went viral was there is a huge consensus paper from the European Atherosclerosis Society that came out, and they had all these experts on their panel, and they came out and they said LDL causes heart disease, right? Like, we're no longer saying it's correlated. We're no longer saying we're seeing these trends. We are saying that LDL causes heart disease. And one way to prevent that is to use, some of the pharmacological drugs that are out there in order to lower it. PKC inhibitors, 9 inhibitors, and statins, right? Do whatever it takes to lower your LDL. Okay. People take that as, godsend, right? It's a consensus statement. People agree. All of this research, huge paper. My first video was, I just happened to be looking at it one time, and I scrolled all the way to the bottom to the conflict of interest. And most of the time, a conflict of interest has, 2 sentences, right? So-and-so got a free meal from blah, 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 or no interest declared. This one was like 800 words long. And I was
Wow.
like, wait, what? And so I started looking, and there was like 20 different, like 12 different statin or cholesterol lowering drugs, companies listed like 100 plus times individually.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, what? And it wasn't like, hey, they got a free meal. It was these people on advisory boards, these people paid to speak at conferences. And I was like, what? Like, seriously? So what you're saying is that all of these people with huge ties to pharmaceutical companies that make lipid lowering drugs came out with a paper that said lipids are the problem and you should take lipid lowering drugs.
Oh my gosh. And we're gonna
Really?
trust that? We're gonna just trust that.
And we're
Follow
going
the
to trust
money.
that, right? And so, but that is cited thousands of times, thousands of
Wow.
times. And so that was the first red flag. I'm like, I'm sorry, but if a whole bunch, that's like when the American Beverage Association came out and said sugar sweetened beverages are not bad for you.
Yeah, yeah, no
Like,
crap. Okay.
really? You're going to come out with a paper that says they are bad for you? Really? That's bad for business. Like,
Oh yeah.
first and foremost, we're in the money making business. Then it's to, kind of keep people alive. So that was the first one. And then the more you go in, the more it's just the world's run by pharmaceutical companies. Like, the money that is there, just go look at what these companies are paying out in fines, like the billions and billions of dollars that these companies pay out for everything, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I'm like, you're really telling me that this isn't shady? And then the
Yeah.
more I look into it, the more I realize that there are plenty of people out there that don't think LDL causes heart disease. And so that's kind of where I ended up. But yeah, I absolutely think LDL is at the forefront of making money for pharmaceutical companies.
Wow, this is like this makes a lot of sense, and I've actually have never had someone break down because, like, yeah, I don't really think LDL is bad. I have like high cholesterol in general, but like if you look at the molecules and you look at all the different biomarkers, it's very healthy. And I've like my naturopath is like, yeah, you're good. You have like fluffy, beautiful cholesterol molecules. It doesn't matter if it's higher, and so like I've never had someone explain this side of it. So my mind is like, okay, this is all making sense. And it comes down to everything. I mean, same thing as people, dietitians still out here peddling that seed oils and omega-6 heavy oils in general are like heart healthy. Well, at the invention of seed oils, like the company that invented them, because they were a byproduct from the fashion industry, paid a huge donation to the American Heart Association right before it came out the seed oils are heart healthy. Like, people don't ever look at the money, and people will look at studies like the one you mentioned and they won't look at the conflict of interest, and that's actually just as important, if not more important, than the study itself. So that's just like, so it's so good that you're looking at that, and so crazy that people aren't looking at that when they're getting their information. So, okay, I'm glad we got that out of the way. I'm sure I'm going to get all the hate messages, but I'm ready for them because I always say, you can be crazy as long as you're not ugly. That's my rule. But okay, so tell me, walk me through a day of typical carnivore eating for you.
So I often don't eat until I often don't eat until sometime between 10 or 12.
Okay.
And that's usually one meal. And then it's usually some kind of beef based hamburger, steak, something like that. And then I usually eat again at like 4, right? And it's a similar type meal. I usually will do like hamburger for one meal and like steak for another. I eat a decent amount of cheese, but that's honestly it, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't, nothing crazy. It can be a lot at a time. I can eat a pound to 2 pounds at a time, which adds up over the course of it. But like I have a cookbook, but I don't get crazy with my meals. Like I have flank and ribs downstairs right now. That will be like my first big meal, and I'll just eat that, right?
Yeah.
Just that. I'm like, and that's totally fine. Like I like the way it tastes. It does the job. I don't need anything fancy. I don't need sauces. I don't like. That's totally fine for me. And some people can't do that. And that's fine. And that's why I think it's important to have some, ways to mix it up. But it's super easy,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm like, oh, well, there it is. Cook it up, done.
Yeah. And it tastes good. I feel like I don't really ever see myself getting tired of steak with salt. Like it's just so satiating that I don't ever see myself getting tired of it. Do you drink coffee?
I do. I drink a lot of
Okay.
coffee. I've actually been better about my coffee, but yes, I do. And people, they're like, oh, I thought you had all this energy. I'm like, yeah, coffee doesn't really give me energy. Coffee just like soothes my soul when I wake up at
Yeah.
6 o'clock in the morning. Like
Yeah.
it's, I don't, part of it's a comfort thing, I guess. Part of it's I like the taste. And part of it is when I did give it up for like a month, I didn't notice any differences.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I don't notice any differences. Why not? Right? Like caffeine is, a very well studied drug, for the lack of a better term, that does have benefits. So I'm like, and people will get in and be like, what animal is the coffee bean from? And I'm like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah. It's not that
actually,
deep.
I'll be a smartass and I'll be like, it's from the mythical unicorn, right? Like the coffee unicorn,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't care. So I do drink coffee. I just haven't seen enough of a reason or benefit to not.
Yeah, and I feel like when you try to give it up, like I know I've tried to give it up, and the only thing I noticed was that I was grumpier and my workouts weren't as good. I wasn't lifting as hard. And I was like, I want it back. It's fine. It's fine. If it's like whatever. Okay, so the with dairy, are you doing raw dairy, pasteurized? Like what's your cheese of choice?
So I don't normally do raw cheese because most cheese, even if it's raw, is still pasteurized to a point. It's just not to a high enough degree to classify it as pasteurized. So yeah, I often don't spend the money for raw cheese because it can be really expensive. So what I have noticed is that as long as I eat a decent quality cheese, right, like not your great value or not your generic brand, I don't have any negatives, right? I have no digestive issues. I have no skin issues. I used to think it was an issue in the past, and I think it was an issue, but once I made that switch to like a little bit better of a quality cheese, I haven't had any issues at all. And so I
Wow.
eat a decent amount. If I'm going to do like milk or anything, it will be raw. I do definitely notice a difference. I don't consider myself lactose intolerant, but if I eat, again, like just generic, ultra pasteurized milk from the store, like I'll notice it. I'll be like,
Mhm.
and I'll have a little bit of digestive issues. But if I drink raw milk, I have no issues at all. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, obviously there's something. They're like, what's the benefit? I'm like, well, I can drink one and not the other. That's all I
Yeah.
need to know. Right. But
I mean,
again,
yeah.
that is also expensive and it's a little more difficult to get to. So I don't do that very often. But if I am going to do like just straight milk, it's going to be raw.
Yeah, for sure. No, I feel the exact same way. Like regular milk does not sit well, but raw milk is like medicine to my body. It's pretty crazy. And then for steak, like what are there's like the grass fed, the pasture raised, all the different ones. What are the words that you are looking for, if any, when it comes to buying your meat?
So I've kind of shifted in the past a little bit. If I'm buying like ground beef, I want it to be grass fed, or the caveat from a like butcher or farm that I know. Because when you start to look into like mass produced ground beef, it starts to get a little weird. There's no telling how many cows it came from, right? So you could be eating a burger that's, theoretically has a couple hundred different cows in it because it's basically a whole bunch of discharged meat that goes into a big grinder and out comes ground beef. Now, is that better than the alternative? Yes. Like, I don't want anybody to get the idea that you have to eat only like the finest. But when it comes to ground beef, I typically will not buy it unless it's from like a Sprouts or I don't go to Trader Joe's, but it would be that kind of thing, or a company that I know. Like there's a local company here in Arizona, AZ Grass Raised Beef, that has been majority of my ground beef since. Or I will make my own. One of my favorites is to buy a huge like prime brisket from Costco and then trim it up really aggressively and used all of the trimmings and the fat for ground beef. And it's
That's
the
so
fattiest
smart.
ground beef ever, but it's so good. And you can get like a $30, it's like 30 or $40, just generic knockoff KitchenAid mixer attachment that will grind your meat for you.
I need to do
So
that.
I have not had, your regular supermarket ground beef in quite a while. And that's the one thing that I will like try to be a little more conscious of. As far as steak, like, grass fed is great, but for the most part, it doesn't taste as good. It's not as well marbled. Again, there are companies that do it really well, but it gets expensive. So I have no problem getting a steak from the supermarket because I at least know that that's one cow, right? Like that's
Hmm.
not multiple cows being all smashed together. Um, and so that's kind of where I'll look for the deals, the holiday weekend ribeye deals at, wherever it is, Costco or Fry's or, Kroger or whatever. But ground beef, I try to be a little more conscious of where I'm getting in.
That's really good to know. Yeah, I've heard that lately. It's kind of spooky to think about. It could come from all these different like farms and all these different whatever, and it's like just put together. Something about that doesn't sit very well. And yeah, I eat a lot of ground beef, so it's really important to have single source for sure. Okay, this is just like an intrusive thought, and I'm curious if you have thoughts on it. If not, that's okay. So one thing is I a while ago got really into Wagyu, and then I learned that Wagyu is actually kind of controversial. Do you have any 2 cents on that?
I've heard about it, but I don't really have like I keep seeing all these headlines that Wagyu is just sick cows, and I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't care. Honestly, I've had Wagyu and it's not that big of a difference to me. Like maybe if I had like A5, A6 Wagyu, but now you're looking at like $90 a pound. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I don't have any interest. And quite frankly, I don't know that I would like that high of fat content. Yes,
Mm,
the fat is, you're gonna have the flavor and all that, but I don't necessarily want all that marbling. Like there are times where I'll prefer like a New York strip to a ribeye because it has less fat. And I'll just add butter on top to, even out the fat content. But I don't like for the most part, I think it's, you're just overpaying for a well marbled steak. And as far as taste, like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Sure, if you told me it was free and you gave me Wagyu for the rest of my life, I'm gonna
You're
become a
eating
big
it.
fan of Wagyu, right? Like, but when it comes to me spending extra money for it, I've only had a couple where I'm like, this is definitely better, but still not worth the $40, $50 a pound that I paid for it.
Yeah. It's probably like in the preparation too. Like the only time I've ever had it has been out and it's been so good. But I'm like, I'm also at a nice steakhouse. Of course it's good. And it normally is like A5. But then, yeah, I saw this video and I was like, I don't even want to deep dive on it. Like sometimes I'm just tired of like learning things that ruin my life, you know? And it was saying that like they basically just feed Wagyu cows like Skittles and candy so that they get basically diabetic. And I'm like, I grew up thinking that Wagyu cows are like the happy massage, like living their best life. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, are you kidding me? I was very upset about that, but it is what it is. So if you're interested in that, guys, look it up. I don't know what to say. If you like Wagyu, don't look it up if you don't want to be ruined for life. Okay, do you do raw meat?
I don't really like. I'm not opposed to it. Like I've done videos where I eat it, mostly because there's not really anybody that I consistently get meat from that I really trust that much. Sushi, I love sushi. Like I'll eat, raw fish all day long. Beef, again, people are scared of it. The it's not inherently bad, right? There's not inherently issues with raw beef. It's all about how it's packaged, prepared, broken down, all of that. That's where it gets, any bacteria that you're going to have. But as far as taste for beef, I just like the taste of it cooked. Like I like my steaks very blue rare. I like all steak, but if I had a perfect preference, it would be, a very nice crust and blue rare.
Mm-hmm.
So that's as close as I get to it, but I like the texture and the taste of having a nice crust on it.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, it's like I mean, I like tartar, although one time I ate tartar and I actually thought I was gonna die the next day. Like my stomach hurt so badly. I had to go to the acupuncturist and have him like put needles around my belly button to like flush out whatever was going on because I actually was like, I think I'm gonna die. But would eat it again. It was very tasty. But yeah, like prefer a nice golden crust. Okay, so I was stalking you on the internet a little bit before this episode to prepare because got to be responsible. And I saw that you have struggled with like acne, eczema, GI issues before. And I can really relate to you in that. I have struggled before I was like really, I mean, I'm not carnivore, but really doing animal based. Before that, I had really bad acne, which was a combo of like veganism and birth control, eczema, gut issues, bloat, all the things. So I really would love to like get into like your journey there with you. So I would love to hear like what was going on with your skin before going to carnivore and like what has been the biggest difference that you've seen now.
Yeah, so I got diagnosed with eczema on my hands when I was like 10. And what would happen is every winter, my hands would like crack so bad that they would bleed.
Ouch.
And I tried everything. I tried every, test under the sun, every cream, every steroid ointment, like everything. Like I wore like the cotton gloves to bed. Nothing worked. And I could sit there. I did this a couple times, like just because I thought it was so fascinating. I could sit there with like a normal lotion, like a water soluble one, and put it on, rub it around, and like 2 seconds later, put on more. And I could just all day long, and my skin would just absorb it and it wouldn't do anything.
Wow.
Right. Like there was never a point where my skin was like, no, that's too much lotion. Like we can't handle anymore. Like I could just sit there for as long as I wanted and just put as much as I want, and it would just soak it up and be gone, and nothing would work. And I finally started to grow out of it as I got older, but it's always been like a little bit of consideration. I just have to be conscious of it. What I found was I wasn't really having problems. When I started carnivore, it became easier to manage it. It was less, I have to stay really on top of it. My skin doesn't really get that dry anymore. But when I did my ultra processed food experiment, my hands broke out in weeping eczema. Like
Wow.
I don't know if you've ever like are familiar with weeping eczema, but basically like you have edema built up and it oozes out of your skin. So I literally had to walk around with like a tissue and like wipe my hands off. And somewhere on there, there's a before and after of what happened with it. And that was after like 2 weeks of eating, standard American. Now, granted, I went hardcore standard American, but like within 2 weeks, I've never had that in my life, weeping eczema, and it was brutal. Going back to carnivore, it took me like 4 months to get rid of it completely. Like I would still
Wow.
have like little flare ups of little like blisters on my fingers, and it was terrible. But ever since going back to carnivore, I haven't had any issues at all. So that was eczema. It's almost exclusively in my hands. I did have like psoriasis patches on my knees that I couldn't figure out how to get rid of. Like I vividly remember noticing them a few months because I would have it on my elbows when I was growing up too. But I remember noticing them a couple months prior to starting carnivore and being like, man, that's annoying. Like not enough for me to go to a dermatologist, but just annoying. So I got like, psoriasis cream, didn't do anything. Started carnivore, and within, it was probably about 3 or 4 months, that went away and hasn't been back. Acne, I wouldn't really get face acne. I would get body acne every once in a while. Like if I ate really heavy dairy, and I still get this a little bit if I eat like a lot of yogurt or sour cream or cream, that kind of dairy. I would get like just random breakouts, whether it was on my back or my chest. But the consistent one was in my hairline.
Mm.
And I would always have acne in my hairline. And again, not bad enough that I would go see a dermatologist, but annoying, right? And then when I started carnivore, that went away like
Wow.
completely. And so I was like, all right, this is cool. Like, so it's a whole bunch of things that there are people that have lifelong, like debilitating, eczema issues, like Bradley Marshall, um, with debilitating, I believe it might actually be psoriasis that he had, but completely debilitating. Like it covered his body, and then he goes carnivore and it clears up completely. And so there's people that did that. Like mine is just a very, very small taste of that. But I've talked to a whole bunch of people that have all had like similar type results. And I'm like, okay, there's like literally only one thing in common, and that's the food that we're eating.
And these are things that people typically will treat topically. Like even I went through a season of dyshydrotic eczema on like 1 square inch of my hand on my pinky, and it was like the worst thing of my life. It's like these bumps that come up, and like a common symptom is it wakes you up all night. It was so painful. And so I was sharing about my journey because I was like, I'm gonna treat this holistically. So I started doing acupuncture, coffee enemas, like all these weird things that people wouldn't necessarily do. And I got all these DMs like, yeah, like I get that just every time I'm in the sun. So it's just like I just have to like stay out of the sun. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. Or people be like, yeah, just like, I have to go off and on the steroids like every once in a while. I'm like, okay, so the one common thread is that the all the topical ideas and all the things like that are only working for a minute. Like it's like you take a fire and bring it down to embers, right? But it's always going to come back. Like why are we acting like it's normal to have symptoms we consistently have to manage for the rest of our lives? Like that's not right. Our bodies are way too intelligent for that. Like they're made perfectly. That doesn't make any sense. So it took me down this rabbit hole, and it's like you learn that actually a lot of these things that people treat topically are like fully internal issues, and you can actually like heal it by healing your body. And it all starts like in the gut, in which the gut is obviously the second brain. Okay, brings me to, was this like kind of a similar timeline where you were struggling with psoriasis and eczema and body acne a little bit? Was that a similar timeline to you having GI issues as well?
Uh, GI issues like resolved instantly, right?
Wow.
Like within days.
Wow.
Um, and it's something that I can like almost predict based on food I eat. And like again, I don't have like, I mean, maybe see these are all things that if I felt like going to a doctor, I might get diagnosed with, right?
Yeah.
Um, I feel like you can these days you can get diagnosed with anything. Like I can telemedicine somebody and be like, oh yeah, I'm having this, and they're like, you definitely have Crohn's, right? It's like, wait, what? Like just that easy? Um, but like no IBS, no, anything like that, but just some issues, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot of people do. And the big one was bloating. And I would bloat pretty bad to the point that I had to be conscious of like when I was eating because I didn't want to feel like uncomfortable,
Mhm.
if I was going to go out or exercise, something like that. And the bloating went away immediately. And I was like, what is this? Like, you're, wait, what? You can actually live life without bloating every time you look at food? Like, that's amazing. And that's, like, quite frankly, one of the biggest perks is I can just go the entire day without bloating. And
Yeah.
like, I'm still lean at the end of the day. Like, I don't look like
Mhm.
I'm 15 pounds heavier. And so that was like almost instantly. And that was definitely the vegetables. And I know it every time I introduce vegetables back in. Some worse than other. I can usually get away with, most spices. But onions, I think onions are a big one for me. Definitely the leafy ones, which I never liked in the first place. So I'm like, that's totally fine with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the GI stuff was almost instantaneously. And honestly, that's why I stuck with it, because I was like, I instantly just felt better.
Yeah, and the bloat one's tough because it's uncomfortable and it's also embarrassing, right? Like it doesn't make you feel confident. And I hear this a lot of people feeling like they're like women are like, I'm 6 months pregnant every time I eat. And like bloating is not healthy. And it's one thing like to be full, like yeah, like the morning skinny when like my you can see my ribs and then you're full, right? That's not the same thing as bloating. And I feel like people confuse those two. It's like, no, like you might like look like you're full because there's literally mass in your body, but you shouldn't have this like painful swelling that like literally looks huge. And it's pretty crazy when you eat a meal and then you're not bloated and you're like, wait, what? Like what just happened? That's so crazy. And I've never heard a guy talk about the same thing. I've heard this from women a lot, but I've actually like never had a guy share the same experience. So like tells me this is more of a universal experience that I think is really important. Okay, and then another thing that I think really sets you apart in this industry is the fact that you're also really into like fitness and lifting and training. What is your like workout regimen throughout the week?
Um, it's been a little difficult since I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I'm a pretty much like a bodybuilder type um, lifting scheme. It varies, but I usually will do, and this is where I will change it up depending on how I'm feeling. Um, I still have like, it's a lot better, but I still have consideration, like joint considerations for my knees, my shoulders, my elbow, my wrists from time to time, my lower back. So I'll vary it based on how I'm feeling and what I know I can get done. Um, but it's not uncommon for me to do a typical like push pull legs, right? Like that's pretty staple. Uh, the latest science-based lifters are all coming out saying that we shouldn't do that anymore, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like just a bunch of tiny nerds that have never made a gain in their life talking about silly papers. But yeah, I typically, there's certain things I train for strength, but for the most part, it's to build muscle mass for a whole bunch of reasons, but not, mainly just being like muscle mass is such a huge predictor of longevity, right?
Mhm.
Like, so, and with that comes strength. I'm never going to power lift. Like powerlifting would absolutely kill me. Like I would end up in a hospital bed from powerlifting, which is fine. Like I gave up on any type of being like super strong man a long, long time ago. I have a lot of sports injuries to thank for that, and it's not worth the negative effect it's going to have on my day to day life. Uh, but yeah, for right now, it's from a cardio standpoint and endurance standpoint, I do jujitsu, and from a strength, I do kind of more of a bodybuilding type splits in the gym.
Love that. What would you say for somebody who wants to get yoked or just wants to build healthy muscle? What are some of your top tips for increasing muscle mass?
You just got to lift heavy, right? Like we have this analysis paralysis, paralysis by analysis, where we're like, well, I need a program. I need I need to get real. And yes, that can help. That can be super beneficial. That can be good at keeping us on track. But in terms of like actual real world results, you pick up heavy things and you put them back down, right? And you try to do it with the best form possible so you don't injure yourself. But that's step one, right? It's like if you want to train for a marathon and people are like, well, I got to set up first just go run, right? Like start with half a mile and then do a mile. And then you can start getting a little bit more into, how am I going to, structure this so I don't injure myself. But starting out, people just need to lift.
Mhm.
Any type of lifting is going to help build muscle for a newbie. And I think that's the biggest thing. They're like, well, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want to get too bulky. I'm like, there's people that spend their whole lives trying to get too bulky and can't, right? Just go lift weights and lift it as heavy as you can to the point where you can't do it anymore, and then rest a little bit and do it again. So I think that's the first one, is just go in and strength train. If you guys like, if you need basic workouts, like just look something up on the internet. Like literally any program that you can follow for the first 4 to 6 weeks is going to be better than doing nothing.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting, like the I'm not trying to get too bulky argument too. It's always the people who are not lifting that say that. First of all, I've never met somebody who actively lifts that said that. But the other thing is that I think is so funny because it's like, obviously you're not going to get too bulky, especially if you're a woman and especially if you're not taking any supplements to like make yourself get bulky. And I'm like, but if you did, let's say in this crazy world, you're the one person who just got crazy bulky beyond what you'd want. Like if it's that easy to get bulky, you can also reduce that. Like it's better just to lift and see what works. You know what I mean? It's like nothing's permanent. If you can always fine tune and tweak. So don't let that idea and that hypothetical keep you from even starting in the first place. Cause like if you don't like your result, you can always change and always tweak. And even if you do, like it's just always a moving target. Like find something else you like. So I think that's a really funny argument because I've never met somebody who's actively working out and taking care of themselves that's ever said that before. But then you hear all the time as a reason to not start. And I'm like, okay, just give it a try, please.
If you're too bulky, it's based on your plate, not on your
Yeah.
exercises.
Oh, 1000%. Even like for me, I've learned like certain, like I obviously am eating all different cuts of steak, but when I'm eating chuck roast every day, I do get a little bulky. And I'm like, okay, that for my biology, like my husband could eat it every single day and stay the exact same amount of lean. I'm like, for my biology, like, okay, I'll break it up with a flank steak every once in a while. Like, that's fine. Just tweak and fine tune. And then you realize like it's not that deep. And like you can treat it like a puzzle, treat it like a game and just find like what works for you. It's just not that like it's not that deep. You're not stuck in one thing once you try it. So I think that's important for people to know. Okay, so self-care wise, like what are some of your self-care or recovery favorites?
Ooh, I'm terrible at recovery.
Really?
I'm terrible at self-care too. Um, that's part of like, I don't really have any hobbies that are like, and this is something I probably should work on, but I don't really have any hobbies that are like, oh, it clears my mind, or it's, like this is my happy place. Yeah, sure, there's things I would do that I enjoy, but usually they involve some sort of like physical torture, right? Like it's, you know,
Yeah.
uh, working out, like golfing on occasion. But part of it is I'm also like super competitive. So I can't just go out and be like, I'm terrible at golf. This is so much fun. I'm like, no, I want to get better. And so that it's like focusing on it and like trying to get better and practicing. Um, honestly, like not a ton, like not a ton. There are things I like to do, like reading, but then I'll get partway through reading and be like, what else could I be doing if I wasn't reading right now?
Mhm.
Okay. Right. So
Yeah.
that is definitely something that I probably should get better on. There's things I can do for like 10 to 15 minutes, like just go stand in the sun. Not right now because I would melt, but there are little things, but I don't really have a whole lot of things where I'm like, oh, this is like, I'm completely relaxed and rejuvenated from the activity that I just did.
Yeah. Okay, we got to get you set up with Aries. I'm the same way, and that's why I always just wear mine because I'm like, I don't have to think about it. Like I'm just do. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's only so many hours a day. We got to get you set up. I want to see what you think about it because that'd be interesting to see how it like helps you like with recovery without having to like add anything to your lifestyle. Okay, and then I love to ask everyone, even the experts, what is your biggest health goal right now?
The biggest one is improving my cardio for jujitsu. And part of that is there's a breathing component to it. I had like exercise induced asthma when I was in college, and I don't know whether it's a deviated septum, but I had like a broken nose that, I'm experimenting with nasal strips right now, to try to help airflow with that. But the biggest one is like not dying when I go to jiu-jitsu, and it's definitely an airflow problem. I would like to not have to use my inhaler. I haven't used it yet because I'm trying to refuse to. But I'm also realizing there comes a time where I'm like, I really got to breathe. Like and
Mhm.
so breathing through my nose has been a difficult. So honestly, that's my biggest one right now. Then on top of the fact that I'm always just trying to put on more muscle, right? Like,
Yeah.
and at this stage, it's like every little bit. So there's little tiny wins with that. Um, so those are kind of the two. Lean down as much as I can without getting too crazy. Put on as much muscle, and then the biggest one is just improve my cardio and my breathing for jujitsu.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that you're like, I need to put on more muscle. I'm like, you're literally so jacked, but okay, cool. That's awesome. Well, where can people find you?
Carnivore JT. That is all of my socials. I think Twitter, there's an underscore between Carnivore and JT, but I don't think there's anybody that's actually Carnivore JT on Twitter. So it'll pop up if you put it in there. And then I have a website, theinnercarnivore.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I learned so much, and I love to hear your perspective. I think you actually have a very refreshing perspective on carnivore and your reasoning why and like your mindset around it. And I know, like, I feel like it's something I really connected to because as I'm just like exploring all the different avenues, I'm like, I really connect with like what you're saying and learning about how it's not just necessarily about like nature's bad. It's like what we've done. And I think the audience will really connect with that as well. And audience, you guys, if you love this episode, make sure to share it. Make sure to tag Carnivore JT and myself, and let's get this word out there. And I can't wait for you guys to listen to this. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will chat soon.